So I'd actually like to start by reading the passage we're going to be talking about. So I'm not going to have it up on your screens. I'd like you just to listen. But the Israelites were unfaithful in regards to the devoted things. Achan, son of Carmi, the son of Zimri, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. Now, Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth Aven to the east of Bethel, and told them, "Go up and spy out the region." So the men went up and spied out Ai. When they returned to Joshua, they said, "Not all the army will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000-3,000 men to take it, and don't weary the whole army, for only a few people live there." So about 3,000 went up. But they were routed by the men of Ai, who killed about 36 of them. They chased the Israelites from the city gate as far as the stone quarries and struck them down on the slopes. At this, the hearts of the people melted in fear and became like water. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord. Remaining there till evening, the elders of Israel did the same and sprinkled dust on their heads. And Joshua said, "Alas, sovereign Lord, why did you ever bring this people across the Jordan to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites, to destroy us? If only we'd been content to stay on the other side of the Jordan. Pardon your servant, Lord. What can I say now that Israel has been routed by its enemies? The Canaanites and the other people of the country will hear about this and they'll surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. What then will you do for your own great name?" The Lord said to Joshua, "Stand up. What are you doing down on your face? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant which I commanded them to keep. They've taken some of the devoted things. They've stolen, they've lied, they've put them with their own possessions." That's why the Israelites can't stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they've been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction. Go, consecrate the people. Tell them, "Consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There are devoted things among you, Israel. You can't stand against your enemies until you remove them. In the morning, present yourselves tribe by tribe. The tribe the Lord chooses shall come forward, clan by clan. The clan the Lord chooses shall come forward, family by family. And the family the Lord chooses shall come forward, man by man. Whoever is caught with the devoted things shall be destroyed by fire, along with all that belongs to him. He's violated the covenant of the Lord and has done an outrageous thing in Israel." Early the next morning, Joshua had Israel come forward by tribes, and Judah was chosen. The clans of Judah came forward, and the Zerahites were chosen. He had the clan of the Zerahites come forward by families, and Zimri was chosen. Joshua had his family come forward, man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zimri, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was chosen. Then Joshua said to Achan, "My son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and honour him. Tell me, what have you done? Don't hide it from me." Achan replied, "It's true. I've sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I've done. When I saw in the plunder a beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. They're hidden in the ground inside my tent with the silver underneath." So Joshua sent messengers and they ran to the tent, and there it was, hidden in his tent with the silver underneath. They took the things from the tent, brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites, and spread them out before the Lord. Then Joshua, together with all Israel, took Achan, son of Zerah, the silver, the robe, the gold bar, his sons and daughters, his cattle, donkeys and sheep, his tent and all that he had, to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, "Why have you brought this trouble on us? The Lord will bring trouble on you today." Then all Israel stoned them. And after they had stoned the rest, they burned them. Over Achan they heaped up a large pile of rocks, which remains to this day. Then the Lord turned from his fierce anger. Therefore that place has been called the Valley of Achor ever since. What an appalling text. It reminds us all too horribly of the appalling events that unfolded today, 21 years ago. 21 years ago, a couple of planes were flown into the World Trade Center in New York. A couple of planes were flown by people who said they were inspired by God to do it. What an appalling text. At first glance, it makes even the ranting of Richard Dawkins sound reasonable. The God of the Old Testament, he says, is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. A misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. Careful words. That seems particularly the case if we cast our minds back to Joshua 6, if you remember what happened last week, or forwards to Joshua 8, thank you, Sophie, or 10, 11, 12, or so many other places in the Old Testament if we can stomach it. Violence like this seems to be typical of the God of the Old Testament. It makes us wonder whether a God like this can rightly be accused as the ground of religious violence and hateful intolerance, leading us to consider seriously joining those who for centuries have been so deeply troubled by the God of the Old Testament that they reject the Old Testament sometimes in its entirety. A bloke back in the 2nd century did that. A guy called Marcion, you may have heard of him. If you didn't, you can look him up. Right through to today, there are people like Cowles, Greg Boyd, a bunch of other people who think that this view of God from the Old Testament is just unacceptable. That we're not going to have anything to do with the God of Joshua, thank you very much, we want the God of Jesus. Does it make sense to worship and trust this God here in the valley of Achor? Achor, by the way, means trouble. This is a troubling valley, a troubling text indeed. These are hard questions, very uncomfortable questions, and sometimes in the face of questions like these, we either run and hide or close our eyes to the problem, maybe stick our fingers in our ears while we hear these passages read. Or perhaps, if we're very brave, we might squint until our eyes tear and try to apologise for the text, or come up with some shallow harmonisation. It won't surprise you, I suspect, to hear that that's not what I want to do today. I want to take a different line. One that avoids the ranting of Dawkins and the rejection of Marcion and our own base cowardice, but one that demands that we look squarely and unflinchingly at this text, seek to understand what it does and what it does not say, and try to come to grips with it as Scripture, because that's what it is. Whatever the text might say, and wherever in the Bible we find it, I think we need to come to grips with it. And so, let's move on past Dawkins' problem and think about Joshua's problem. Now, it's important for us to recognise that this was a fairly significant problem for Joshua. Now, particularly after Jericho. So we find this is AI. That's what it actually looks like. It's not terribly impressive, really, is it? And in fact, at that time, it wasn't terribly impressive either. The word AI means ruin. And most likely at this time, there had been a city there in the past, but most likely it was now a ruin, and there was an encampment there because it's a hill, and hills are good defensive places, right? And so this was most likely an outpost rather than a well-established city, okay? But Sophie will have some more to say about that next week, so I'll not steal your thunder. But it was a strategically significant military outpost or camp, and it was an important next step for Israel. And I'm going to turn around in a second, because I think I've got a pointer thing here. There we go. So here's Jericho. The map's not the clearest in this light. There's Jericho. Here's where they came. This was their first encounter. And here's Ai. Now what you see is they've just come across the Jordan, and they're now finding their way through this hill. This is actually a valley. Out through these valleys, through the hill country, and down into the plains. So this is an important next step strategically for Israel. It's in the hills, not in the Jordan plain. So there's a plain, remember? So we're up in the hills. And this is an important staging area for the next phase of their campaign. It's both an important trade route, but also a defensible place and a strategic place. And so it makes sense for them to spy out this valley, which for them seems to be a valley of opportunity. It also helps make sense of why Joshua reacts so badly. Like 36 men killed. Well, yes, that's bad and sad news for them and their families, but 36 men. That's about 15 seconds worth of work at Gallipoli, by the way. So it's not a huge number. Now, there is a humiliating irony here, because Ai is a ruin. They can't even take a ruin. That's not great news, right? But you need to remember that theirs is a vulnerable position. They've just crossed over into this land. They are, if you like, an exposed beachhead in hostile territory. They're not yet settled and secure. They have no fortified cities, right? All they are is a little migratory military band. They have their military prowess, they have their morale, and they have the fear of the opposition, and that's all they've got going for them. Well, apart from Yahweh. Although not so much this day. Israel's loss is the Amorites' gain. And Joshua rightly sees that a reversal of this kind isn't just a momentary blip on the graph. A reversal of this kind of defeat, threatens the whole project. Israel's future, their military future, because remember they are a military enterprise at the moment, is at stake. And so he rightly brings this to God. Now, do you notice this? This This is actually quite cool. I'd love to spend some more time on this, but I won't. God is the problem, but God is also, for Joshua, the only possible solution. Do you notice that? Why have you done this? He's not actually really asking God for an explanation, although God does give one on this occasion. He's asking for God to do something to fix the problem, right? So he rightly brings this to God, and he prays with characteristic Old Testament frankness. I love prayers in the Old Testament. Ours are often so polite, so pitiful. Here you see faith. And he says, our future is at stake. Oh, and by the way, so's yours. Yes? Because it's not just Israel here, right? It's not just their future, because God has tied God's character and purposes to Israel, the Israel project. And so if they fail, well, good work there, God. What was the point of starting something you couldn't finish? And he rightly expects God to answer and to provide a solution to this crisis, a solution for both Israel and for God. This valley of opportunity for Israel has become a valley of trouble. What is God doing? And so we come to God's solution. And you think, cure? Cure? That's worse than a disease. God does answer, God provides a solution, but the solution seems worse than the problem in the first place. The cure seems more deadly than the disease. Solution, catch the guilty one, stone him, burn him, and all he has. Cool. So, God calls Joshua to gather the people, hunt out the guilty one, and destroy him and all he has. Have you ever wondered why? Why this whole rigmarole of bringing Israel, choosing the tribe, choosing the family group within the tribe, choosing the smaller group within the family group, within the tribe within Israel, choosing the household within the smaller family group, within the household, within the tribe, within Israel? Surely God knows. I mean, God figured it out. This is why things went so wrong for them. Why this? There's a kind of forensic thing. Actually, if you think about it, we're used to this kind of thing now, aren't we? This is contact tracing, if you like. This is helping Israel track the problem back to the source. Not giving God knowledge God doesn't have, but helping Israel track the problem back to the solution. And it also, of course, heightens tension, proves the point, and interestingly, it calls forth the confession from Achan. Having isolated the infection, having made the diagnosis, sorry, you can never get to the doctor, can you? The treatment is prescribed and then administered. But some treatment, eh? It's almost Python-esque. He's a witch, burn him. It certainly seems a bit of overkill, so to speak. Stone him and then burn him and then pile rocks on him and his whole family and all the stuff he's got. But that's what they do. And so Achan, do you notice this? Achan is given a really careful, detailed genealogy. Do you notice that? Normally, genealogies are given so that you can identify who they are and see their future in Israel's story. Achan, with all this careful genealogy, has no future. He is erased. all that is left is this story. God answers, God provides a solution, but the solution seems worse than the problem, the cure more deadly than the disease. You know, Tim mentioned that I used to be a medical type doctor. I'm always wary of heroic cures. Some surgeons seem to delight so much in their technical competence that they engage in the most mutilating and maiming of surgery that leaves the patient worse off than when they started. That's not much of a cure, really. Or so it seems, but it depends, doesn't it, on the disease. Nowadays, no matter how badly someone's arm is broken, we don't go about amputating them. One of my colleagues a few years ago used to ride to work. Please God, this doesn't happen to you, Peter. And he came off his bike one day and hit the curb and managed to break his elbow really badly. It was a really bad break. A bad enough break that about anywhere from about 70 to 100 years ago or more, he would have lost the arm. We don't go around amputating people's arms when they have a badly broken arm now. We don't go amputating people's arms at all unless they've got something like what's called gas gangrene. I won't go into the details. It is particularly horrible. And if there are all sorts of treatments you can give, but sometimes the only thing you can do to stop literally the rot spreading and killing the person is to amputate. That's the only solution. Or perhaps when someone is trapped by their crushed arm in a fallen building or a car wreck and they're bleeding out, and the only way to get them out is for them to lose the arm, that their life might be saved. Then it's a matter of emergency surgery. An amputation is what you need to do. Whatever we think, and we think this surely the cure is worse than the disease here. Whatever we may think, though, this is not a case, in Akan's case, of cutting off an arm to fix a sprain or even a simple broken limb. This is in fact a life-threatening emergency at a crucial stage of Israel's life. Really? Like, what's he done? He's nicked a fancy robe, the kind that Joseph got around in actually, very similar to that, and a bit of silver and gold. And you think, like, really? That's theological gas gangrene? Seems more like nasty broken bone, but nothing more than that. Well, actually, we see the deadliness of this disease, the seriousness of the risk, in the kind of language that we find in verse 15. In verse 15, we hear that they have transgressed the covenant. Now, covenant's a big word in Old Testament theology, right? And New Testament theology, for that matter. Is that which binds Israel to Yahweh, to the Lord, and to the Lord's purpose, yes? Now, so I'm going to go Hebrew just for a moment. Bear with me, there is a point. The word that's used for transgress here is the very same verb that's used for crossing the Jordan, for crossing out of Egypt, right? For crossing out of bondage into freedom. Yeah? What they have done is they have crossed out of the covenant. Oh, now that's a bit bigger, isn't it? Yes? It's not transgression. You think, well, that's bad, but this is by this they have actually exodused the covenant. Right? That's pretty big. It's also seen in the very first verse of the chapter. Now, this is not something that Joshua knows, right? This is not something that the people who go out and spy out AI know. This is not something that the 3,000 people who go up to attack AI, 3 companies probably, this bunch of people who went up to attack AI, it's not something they knew. This is something that Yahweh knew and that the storyteller knows and gives us a heads up right from the start. And what he says is that they had committed infidelity, disloyalty against cherem. There's a word. Practice saying it probably about 4 or 5. This is more than just social distancing when you're learning to say a word like cherem, or wear a face shield. The cherem, this is the stuff which is normally translated devoted to destruction, is that which belongs to Yahweh unconditionally, irrevocably. There's no taking this back. It is permanently Yahweh's. And the way in which this is normally given over to Yahweh is by destroying it so that nobody else can use it, right? They've been disloyal with respect to the cherem. And there's also something really, really, really powerful in what Akan says when he describes his sin. 3 verbs are used: see, covet, and take. Yeah, fine. See, covet, and take is precisely what happens at that infamous tree. This takes us back to Genesis 3, verse 6. This is an expression of that deepest marring of the human heart, that great tear in the very fabric of reality, which is sin, that God's mission seeks to make. God's mission is to mend that break in the fabric of reality, and this action threatens to undo all of that. Here, back now in the promised land, which is presented in many respects as a new Eden of God's grace, we're back under the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, with the juices of that bitter fruit staining the chin of Israel. But more, things get worse for Israel. For this breach of cherem, of this setting aside stuff for God, threatens the very existence of Israel. It threatens their identity, who they are. It threatens their purpose, what they're there for. They are called, as Israel, to be different, to show what it looks like to live not broken but mended lives. They are called to be Yahweh's own people. They are called to live differently, to represent Yahweh in the world, to show who Yahweh is, and to demonstrate Yahweh's great world-mending project. That's their job. To do that, though, they have to have nothing to do with the Canaanites and all they stand for. That's the point of the cherem in the first place. Because the Canaanites are, in the book of Joshua, they stand for everything against which Yahweh stands. They stand, Canaanites, for idolatry, we know that, but they also stand for injustice and brutality. These little outposts they had, they used for the violent, vicious control of the populace that they have subjugated to their vicious reign. This is what it meant to be Canaanite, and the Israelites are called to have nothing to do with that. To honour Yahweh, to stand for Yahweh's holy purposes. They're called to be a holy people, serving a holy God, called to a holy mission. And all of that is at stake. They are passing out of covenant. Here we find ourselves back in Joshua 5, if you remember 13 through 15, being confronted with the question, not is God for or against us, but are we with God or against God? And here Israel is faced with a very uncomfortable answer to that deeply challenging question. Joshua is profoundly wrong in what he sees the problem as being, by the way, when you think about it. It's not military defeat that risks Israel's future. They're benefiting from Yahweh's Exodus purpose and furthering it. That's not the risk. The risk is them becoming like the nations. For then they will not be a holy people. Then they could not serve a holy God. Then they could not serve their holy mission to a needy and broken world. God's purposes, Israel's future, their place in God's purposes in the world, all of that is on the line. Their missional holiness is bleeding into the dust of the valley of Achor, and drastic surgery is needed. That's what's at stake here. You can see that in the language that we find of them gathering, of Yahweh seeking out Achan's sin and Achan's response. But still we're stuck with the extent of the response, the overkill. Not just stone him and burn him, but all he has and his children. What do we do with that? Well, this is deeply uncomfortable, but to be horribly fair, the death of Achan's family is mainly judgment against him, not them. Now, true. Given where the booty is hidden, remember, this is dug in the ground in the tent. Like, no one else in the tent knows what's going on here? Really? But that's a secondary thing. Remember the genealogy, the very careful genealogy he's given, which is normally there to locate someone in the story and to see where they're located in the ongoing story. Achan can have no part in this story. Achan has given up all right to be part of Yahweh's people, to be caught up in Yahweh's purpose. So the death of his children means he has no future in Israel. No remembrance until the end of days other than his fate. For Achan, his punishment's not just death, it's obliteration. It's horrible. Let's be clear about this. But it also makes a horrible kind of sense. For Israel, remember, is called to be a holy people. How can someone like Achan have a future in Israel? Israel is called to serve a holy God. How can someone like Achan serve Yahweh? Israel is called to a holy mission. And people like Achan can have no part to play in it. This is serious. It's drastic surgery, but then this is no sprain, it's a matter of life and death, not just for Israel, but actually for the world. And there's a troubling logic to his faith. For Achan and his family are treated exactly the same way that Joshua treated the Canaanites of Jericho. They become another burnt over pile of rubble that stands as a perpetual memorial of God's fierce judgment. Now, in an odd way, in a very unpleasant and uncomfortable way, this shows that God, at least one bit of Dawkins' rant against Yahweh of the Old Testament's wrong, because God's not xenophobic. God's not committed to one ethnic group. For not only does this God, remember last week, God saves Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute, and not just saves her, but this includes her in the genealogy of David, Israel's great king, and so the Messiah's genealogy. That's where her story now takes her. But he erases Achan from history and excludes this man of Judah from any future in David and his kingdom. Maybe now we get the picture. Now we understand Yahweh's sharp response to Joshua in verses 10 to 12. Now perhaps we see the problem as Yahweh sees it. Yahweh's name is not actually threatened, although Israel's future is. Yahweh's character is unblemished. Yahweh is still the faithful God of covenant, but Israel stands on a knife edge. For if you carry on like this, God says, I will not be with you. Did you hear that? I will not be with you. And, to use a technical theological term, if God's not with them, they're stuffed. That's it, game over. God is not with you, you have everything to fear. And there we leave it. That's where we must leave Achan and all that he has, as ashes under a pile of rubble, while Israel gets on with the business of being a holy people, in relationship with a holy God, engaged in a holy mission. His name, a name of infamy, is all that's left. He's no example, just a warning. He has no other future in Israel than to provide the punning name for this valley of trouble, the valley of Achor, the scene of Achan. It's not a great English pun, but the best I can do is this is the valley of aching. So, great. Thanks, mate, you might be saying. So what do we do with a text like this? Well, I think the first thing you have to do is face them. Not pretend that they are something that they are not. We feel like, well, I think, at least I do, maybe you're braver than I, we often feel like recoiling from them, don't we? Just turning, hiding our faces, getting on to the next chapter, or well, actually maybe the next book. But we need to face them squarely. Have a bit of courage. Hear them as sacred scripture. But that means we have to try and make sense of them before we try and apologise for them. And you may find, you may not, but I think I found that there's a bit less to apologise for than I first thought. And what there is to apologise for is very different to what I first thought. The problem here is not divine violence, actually. Or at least that's not the primary problem. It's the nature of God's rescue plan and Israel's role in it. And that's a much bigger problem than violence, and one that requires a different solution. Here's the thing. If the world is in need of saving, and Israel is called to be those who stand for God's plan and actually implement God's rescue plan. If God is the righteous judge and sin is that which destroys people, communities, God's world, if it's that which tears a great rent in the fabric of reality and needs to be radically dealt with, then it makes sense here. It actually makes sense in Acts 5. Now, perhaps you might see the point of having that passage read before Joshua 7. There's a similar troubling ferocity in Acts 5, isn't there? And again, it seems to be over doesn't seem to be such a big deal. Like, it's not as if the early church was strapped for cash. We know that. Barnabas and others. It also, by the way, goes to show that the problem doesn't lie with the Old Testament God as such, does it? I think Acts is in the New Testament. I don't know about that. Anyway. What Ananias and Sapphira do seems just as trivial, very similar, interestingly, isn't it? Just as trivial as what Achan does. But it threatens the very existence of the church. Well, the church is called to be a holy people. The church is called to serve a holy God. The church is called to a holy mission. And as Acts 2 and 4 make plain, the character of the community, who they are, how they relate to each other, way in which they care for each other, and whether that's selfless or not, is fundamental to their identity. And so what Ananias and Sapphira do is just as risky. It runs the same danger of scuttling the divine project as does Achan's sin. True, there's less fire and fewer stones, but a similar extreme measure is taken. So if this is a lesson in apologetics, it's a hard and uncomfortable one. God's not a moral monster, but nor is God the kind of, I can't think of another better way of putting it, the vacuously avuncular, the emptily uncle-like God that Dawkins and others seems to want God to be. God like that isn't worthy of worship. But the God of scary holiness and unimpeachable fidelity and indescribable grace, that God's worth worship. This text gives us a better picture of who God is, but also presents us with a significant challenge. God's mission matters, and we have been entrusted with a crucial role in it. For that to work, we have to be the kind of people who can rightly count us as part of that mission, who can rightly be seen as identified with that God. And it reminds us, by an odd and troublingly ash-strewn and rocky route to grace, of just how it is that we can count ourselves to be part of this people, part of this project. We are part of this project by the grace of God. But God calls us to be the kind of people who can rightly bear God's name into a broken and torn world which is in need of healing. But only if we're the people of God. There's a lot more I could say. I've chewed up way more time than I should have. So I apologise for that. But let me pray, and I'll hand back to Tim. Our Lord and God, please help us to see how a text even like this is your good gift to us as your people. Please remind us of the extraordinary privilege it is to be counted as your people. Please remind us of the delightful and terrifying privilege and responsibility of bearing your name in your world. And please, living God, we ask that by that grace that you've lavished on us through your Holy Spirit, form us to be people who show this desperately needy world who you are and what you're about in it. Do that, please, for Christ's sake. Amen.